All right, welcome to another great episode of Cloud and Clear. This time, my guest is James Glover, CEO of Coherent Path. Welcome, James.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Tony.
Recent customer of ours, but we've gotten to know each other and I think work together as two companies pretty quickly. So I'm very excited to be able to bring you on and have you tell your story and tell our story together. You've been doing this for a long time. I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, started in 2012. But yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
What gave you your idea to do this? Where did you see like the market fit and what led you to this passion around marketing and email marketing and communications?
Yeah, great question. I was working with my co-founder. He's a math professor out of Dartmouth College, and we're actually working on a couple of longer running fraud problems. So one of them is, instead of like I steal Tony's credit card and run to the wrong liquor store, there was a company called Fair Isaac that would flag an alert and say that's not what we guessed Tony would do next. But what happened, as people started to acquire stolen identities, they needed a way to monetize them. So we were working with JP Morgan and Wells Fargo and folks like that. And what we would see is that a customer would apply for a credit card, try to look like a normal person for 6 to 9 months, and then run the card up to the limit and disappear. And so the kind of analytics that you need to fight that is more like trying to model a customer through time in the data, and then try to use that to spot the counterfeits. We actually also worked for the US government. They gave us all soldiers, medical and prescription data, and said, find the ones that are becoming addicted to prescription drugs. So it's a journey, but a journey with an inflection point that you're trying to model through time. So I'm not trying to guess what you would do next. I'm trying to guess whether or not you're on a journey towards a bad place. And so we did that for a while, and then we sold that business to Fidelity Information Services. And we said, who else cares about the journeys that their customers are on? And we felt like in the world of retail, the analytics there was very oriented towards the kind of next step, guessing what Tony would do next, as opposed to thinking about the customer journey through time. So we kind of hit on that as a great way to leverage our experience and to move into a new space. So that's kind of the history side of it.
2012, that was early days of, I would say, big data and sophisticated data analytics, ML, a little bit of AI, I assume, in terms of being able to build the predictive models. Was that sort of part of your co-founder's sort of math thesis and work that he was doing, that he was able to figure that out so early?
Well, what he discovered is that you could put a geometry on a product in transactional space, and then our customer is LLB, Gap, etc. Then you put the customer into the geometry, and you see the dynamics of how they're moving through it, and then you try to kind of lead them on a journey towards becoming the highest value version of themselves. We often use the example of ET. When ET was in the forest, Elliot put down a stream of Reese's Pieces, try to get him back to Elliot's house there. And so Greg that's his branch of math. And so he published some academic work around putting hyperbolic geometries on transactional spaces. And then, so that was kind of the foundational work that we used for our patent. And then, we needed to figure out how do you put that into the real world in a big data environment.
Wow. So there's a patent behind this.
Mm-hmm. That's good one too. Influencing customer journeys through product and transactional spaces. So it's pretty strong.
I love how you describe it as a journey, because I think so much of the world still tends to operate in a transactional mindset.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But I think what you're alluding to, and this is probably where you found the product market fit, or whatever the current popular vernacular is that it's about building a relationship with that potential customer or existing customer over time, right? Is that the
absolutely
primary thesis? Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of sometimes also use the analogy of like we'd be like a nutritionist or a dietitian or something like that, so to emphasize the fact that we want to think about that relationship through time, and we want to create a meal plan for Tony over the next, couple of years that's going to have him grow up to be big and strong, so retailers are sort of notoriously oriented around tomorrow. It's a difficult time for a lot of retailers. And so, the easiest solution is the biggest possible discount, which will make the cash register ring for today, as opposed to kind of thinking about that relationship with the customer through time and, exposing them to as many categories as possible. And we often use the example of a personal shopper. If you were to walk into Bloomingdale's and, there's James, your personal shopper, you wouldn't expect them to say, do you want to buy some more of whatever, or hey, can I induce you to shop with some huge discount kind of thing. They would be optimized around trying to show you more and more of the catalog.
Winning the lowest cost game is very, very hard. Almost nobody can do that unless you're Walmart or somebody, right? You can't really do that sustainably. So absolutely, the value game is where brands and companies can differentiate themselves. And I think what a lot of retailers don't realize is that people are willing to pay maybe more than they think based on the experience, right?
Yeah, we did a study once with one of the big retailers where we found that 70% of their customers were no more likely to respond to a discount than to a content-based offer. And so 70% of the time when they were offering a discount, they were doing it without needing to, where they could have motivated that customer by exposure to a new part of the catalog.
That is so much. That sounds like so much money. If you're just
Yes.
discounting needlessly 70% of the time, that sounds like a lot of margin leaving the P&L for no good reason.
Yeah, well, it's knowing which 70%, right, is the one that you didn't need to do, right? So that's the challenging part.
So has your business experienced kind of a different level of interest because of the last couple of years?
You mean like COVID specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, we've more than tripled in size over the last 12 months. It's been amazing. And I would say that a big part of that, like, we have some great brands like Bloomingdale's, and Bloomingdale's for 15 years tried to become more of a .com, and then COVID came and they became a .com overnight. And like, it was amazing to see the transformation, and like, they just did a great job at responding to the circumstances and driving the relationships through the internet as opposed to in person, and still leveraging the stores for pickup and things like that. But it just forced a massive transition that would have taken them 10 years otherwise. And so we kind of rose with the tide of those great retailers, L.B., Gap, etc.
I mean, we see it from our side as well, like, and not just with retail, but other types of businesses who have had this, if you're a silver lining type of person, you look at it as urgency and opportunity to transform in a way that maybe you thought you had much longer to figure out. And but there's been like a great divide, I think, of companies, whether it's retail, food service, other things, where they've adapted very quickly to this new paradigm versus those that kind of resisted or couldn't move quickly enough. We've seen like this complete division of, I think, good fortune versus the risk of, an existential risk.
Yeah, totally. And what we've seen is that it's given power to the folks in the marketing org and the folks, there were turf wars that were being, adjudicated over the last 10 years, that where all of a sudden all the power shifted to, a different part of the organization. And I think that's a big part of what let them move quickly. So, yeah.
What's great about technologies like yours, I think, is that, and I think just new modalities of marketing or communication or service delivery. You mentioned, pickup, curbside, at Bloomingdale's. I don't know. By the way, I don't know how you knew I shopped at Bloomingdale's, but this is from Bloomingdale's. But
there you go.
Great. Your
Keep
customer.
shopping. I hope you're in the test group, not the control.
Yeah, me too. But I think those the new capabilities, the muscle memory that's being created. Like, my thesis is that's not going away. I feel like that's just going to be another modality that they'll continue to use because customers will continue to desire, right? They'll want
Oh,
to
for sure.
maintain digital experiences. They'll want to maintain curbside pickup for big population. Others will still want to, as soon as they can go back to the store, they'll want to go back to the store. Before, a lot of people who thought they could never shop this way or interact this way or consume this way are like, actually, this is pretty convenient. I'm going to
Yeah.
keep doing it.
Yeah, and it goes down to it's the basic strength of the value proposition, right? And so the store is good for some kinds of discovery, and but online is convenient and great for other use cases. And so I think for sure these big retailers have got good at leveraging their competitive advantage, what they do have over Amazon, and the things that Amazon can't do. And so that kind of omnivore's perspective has been great for them. And so they've all of a sudden beefed up their online presence, but now they've got both, and so they can really actually compete, which is great to see.
Speaking of the market not waiting for anyone, I mean, the biggest irony ever as you walk around is I don't know, a Borders that's no longer there, that's been replaced by a physical Amazon store.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
It's like, what? But to your point, I think even Amazon realizes that there's this other brick and mortar advantage that these other retailers have. But if they wait too long, like, Amazon's just gonna have both. So it's like they have to use that, the distribution, the customer base. They have all these advantages that if they execute well on the digital side, I think it'll make them thrive. And there's other brands who've done really well. Obviously, I think Best Buy and the Home Depots and the Lowe's, and like a lot of these companies have figured it out, but the ones who have not, it's been really tough for. Same thing for like food service, restaurants. Some restaurants did exceptionally well during the pandemic period because they figured out a different modality of driving relationships and servicing their customers. So, I mean, talk about, we also, I think what you've seen is sort of a subsection of what we've seen, which is this acceleration of becoming digital, which is a great opportunity, I think.
And once they do that, once they
Yeah.
kind of sort out the distribution, these are just channels to the customer. And it goes back to what they're actually good at, which is making great products and making, marketing that motivates people to explore those great products. You know what I mean? Like, they've always been good at making products, and they've always been good at marketing creative. And so if those become the differentiators, if it's no longer, I have all the features of Amazon, I have free shipping, I have, in-store pickup, or, maybe some features that Amazon doesn't have, but it's not going to be about that. It's going to be about the products and their core marketing abilities, which is what they have been good at historically. So that's good.
So going back to the technology and the company a little bit. So you've chosen primarily like email is the medium by which you're building these relationships. So how does it actually work?
Think of it this way. Like, I don't know how many times you shopped at Bloomingdale's in the last year, but I'm going to go with something like 2 to 4 times, and then think about how many times you visited the store or their website, maybe 10 times in total. How many emails did they send you? 200, right? So if you think about the primary mechanism,
my rewards, I get this email for that, or this email for that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it is the primary vehicle that they use to communicate to their customer. And if you're a machine learning or an artificial intelligence solution like we are, email is the perfect place to be, because it's where the conversation is happening with the customer. And they have a ton of them. They have millions and millions of customers. They produce a lot of creative. And so the machine has a lot of options to choose from, and it knows it's going to have, 30 bullets over the next month. And so it can construct that diet that we talked about in terms of, trying to make the best customer.
And is it able to change that formula, the plan in flight, based on like my behavior?
Yeah, remember, so we talked a little bit about that geometry, like ET in the forest. And so the geometry is relatively stable, but for each and every customer, their place in the geometry is constantly moving. And so, we update that every single time we have an opportunity to talk to them. And then we also build an ideal version of that customer for every single customer, and we try to put Reese's Pieces or content in front of them to try to lead them to that ideal version of themselves. And so that dynamic is changing every single time we have a chance to send an email or to communicate to that customer. And so, yeah, you're talking about 1.5 billion emails a week, where which are each and every one of them being personalized for the recipient.
That's powerful. And I think the other thing that's potentially helped you is has, I think, brought email lists back to the forefront of importance in general, is what Apple did with iOS with the do not track. Like, it's actually completely changed the marketing paradigm, and especially D2C, where the social platforms, like, you just couldn't deliver ads in as an effective way anymore, right?
Yeah, cost of acquisition goes up or becomes impossible in some instances. And folks like us who use only zero party or first party data, which is still, totally valid. Yeah, it's a good time to be alive for those of us who are using first party data. And we have none of the duress that folks that were focused on Facebook ads or, yeah.
That was a big change. That was a huge change. And I've heard from many people, email first party, it's just the importance of that has, skyrocketed. So, hey,
Yeah.
it's good. It's better to be lucky than good, but it's good. It's best to be both. It's best to be both.
Yeah.
So tell me about, like, how the tech stack for you has changed. I mean, 2012, you're dealing with a completely different tech stack that's available now, which is, by the way, the beauty of your story and the customers we serve in general, either customers like you who provide software to other types of customers we have, or them directly, is you're pretty much limited by your imagination today in terms of what you're able to do. But you didn't start in the current, like embarrassment of riches of how much technology is available in this super advanced public cloud space. But tell me about your journey, like last 10 years of your tech stack. How do you figure this out in 2012, and how does that evolve?
Yeah, I'd say there were two phases. The first phase where we started out on Amazon, we sort of thought about as our enemy on some level because we're trying to help these big retailers in their war against Amazon. And then the second phase when we moved to Google, and maybe in the first phase,
you were never
like
on premise. Like, you were always day one.
Well, I historically in my career I have been on premise, and one of the things that
not in the last decade.
Yeah, that not in the last decade. What we love, though, moving from on-prem, which is what we were with the fraud solution and that solution for the federal government, the difference between doing things on-prem and doing things in the cloud, I would say, like, the single biggest difference is you can build your business around letting people try the solution for free. Right. And if you think about that, has two massive implications, right? One is that they know it works for them. You get better customers, who actually you're going to add value to because they've been able to make sure that there's good fit between what you do and what they do. So that's huge. But the second thing is when customers are trying it, you're always testing the value, right? And so it makes the whole company very oriented around that A/B test that we do for the customer and figuring out, okay, how are we going to make this work better? How are we going to make this work better? So every day, your mindset is around how do you improve the solution, and you're very focused on that in a way that when you were shipping software, and you had a huge enterprise process for the solution, like you had some vague target of what you were trying to build together, but it was super hard to stay focused on the value. Whereas when everything is, built around a trial that, is going to do an A/B test where I know to the dollar how much money I made Bloomingdale's yesterday, so that changes the whole culture of the company to be oriented around, one, removing as much friction from the sales process as possible by letting people try it for free. But then secondarily, letting people, everyone in the company focus on the value that you're providing. And so you just keep getting better and better from that perspective. So I would say, like, from, my Cro-Magnon previous experiences to living in the cloud world, I would say that is the been a huge difference, which has meant a lot for the business.
Yeah. And then look, I don't blame you for starting on Amazon in 2012. I think Google wasn't quite there yet. It's pretty common in I would say the more mature digital companies that we serve. I want to talk about that journey then to GCP. What was the inflection point? How much, you kind of alluded to your customers are retailers issue, but I want to hear about that and actually the technology as well. Like, what did you discover in the process of switching?
Yeah, maybe two big things. One was that when we started out, we were rolling our own on a lot of our Spark and infrastructure, and I'm not the most technical guy in the world, but what happened is as we got farther and farther along, the world passed us, right? In terms of what we could capably do as a 30-person company at the time, and as we were kind of rolling our own infrastructure, because none of it existed in 2012, we were going slower, or we were watching the world go faster and faster, and we were sitting there pretty enviously saying, this kind of sucks. And so when we moved to Google, we basically used a ton more off-the-shelf components that the world had developed, that just weren't around when we started. And that was an investment in the beginning, but it's enabled us to go so much faster. And so that was a huge part of it, the kind of ability to take advantage of the fact that the world was working, for us in some level. So that was huge. And then the market pressure, like our customers, what they tolerated in 2012, they wanted to contractually prohibit by 2018 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like where they were like, okay, we like your stuff, but we don't like it enough to tolerate you giving some of that money to our worst enemy, basically. And so it became a part of what the customers wanted to put pressure on. And so between the desire to go way faster by not rolling our own on a lot of these things, and the desire to truly be a good partner to our customers, and hear them when they say, like, this really bothers us, I think those two things combined to make the move make a ton of sense for us.
Yeah, the second part is we're not going to compete with the market, with our customers, and we're not going to compete with the software community. We don't want to be in everyone's business. We want to be the most desirable building blocks for every other software company. So I think that's hopefully what you've discovered. The other part I'll say, and I applaud you for this, when we're doing these takeouts or migrations from any platform, we really do encourage like the thoughtfulness around the opportunity to re-architect. We don't want to sometimes you have to and do them in phases, which is fine, but there's nothing inherently wrong with sort of a migrate then re-architect. But if you're able to do it as you're moving, that's what we want to hear. We want to hear like, we could do 3 releases a year. Now we're doing 30 a month, like that kind of capability. And we're using more platform services as opposed to compute and storage services, which is like cheaper and scales better and all that stuff. So hopefully you're able to do even more as far as sort of feature and functionality development on your own platform over time by virtue of being on GCP. That's what we hope.
Well, if you think about when we started out, we were very interested in controlling the contents of the message, but as the solution is solidified, now by the time Bloomingdale's lets me decide the contents of every email that I'm sending you, they're in a good position to let me say what time of day I should send it to you, how many emails, why does everybody get, why do they divide it into just a small number of buckets, small, medium, and large, in terms of the amount of content that you give. And then ultimately, those promotions, how much of that are they willing to turn over to a machine? And if we do a great job on the contents and what time of day and how much email, then we're in a great position to help them with that, mother of all problems, which is the discounting problem. So, yeah, I mean, and that like having a much more flexible infrastructure where we can, continue to build models and solutions, and and have Greg work in his sandbox has been great.
Mhm. So, if you're able to share your thoughts on the future, which is, I'm sure, as a CEO, you think about the future quite often, as I do. What can you predict about the future of retail and the future of Coherent Path?
Yeah, I mean, for the future of retail, if you think about, like, I think of the core value proposition of a retailer being understanding their customer, right? And so that I could pick a random new product, and you could tell me which of your customers that would appeal to, right? And so part of building a relationship with the customer is providing that role of curating the universe of products down to the ones that Tony will be interested in. Otherwise, they're going to get disintermediated by companies that are trying to go direct to consumer, right? And so, if they can maintain that value proposition, that is a valuable thing. You're busy, you know what I mean? Someone who can curate the universe down to the stuff that you're interested in. That's the core value proposition of the retailer. That and marketing from my perspective, the ability to put that product into a context that can help you visualize why it might be great for you, which is kind of the essence of the marketing. And so I think retailers that are good at that and understand that that's their core differentiation and are making the investments in order to continue to get better and better, and especially to stand for a part of the market. Like, I love LL Bean, their BN Outsider Bean, they stand for something, right? We want to be about outdoor family enthusiasm. And so we're going to get great at picking products and bringing them to people who care about outdoor family enthusiasm, and so that's a retailer that stands for something and will be successful. So I see that as kind of that's where retail's going, and that you will be under great pressure if your value proposition is providing discounts, that say today only 70% off. That's not as strong a value proposition. Right. So I would say that's on the future of retail. On the future of Coherent Path, we want to tuck in behind that value proposition, obviously, right? And we want to be the experts. Let them be great at making products. Let them be great at building marketing materials, and let us help them with the data science that's required to, at scale, to do it for 5 million customers individually for each and every one of them, help to decide, okay, this is the right product to put in front of that customer at the right time, in the right channel, in the right context, with the whole message being built out by a machine. And so that's a special kind of machine that you have to turn that, you want the marketer to turn over his customer to that kind of a machine. We think that's pretty valuable. And so we've got, the top of the pyramid in terms of TJ Maxx, Bloomingdale's, LL Bean, The Gap, Banana Republic, et cetera. So we've got the best retailers that are out there now.
Amazing.
And now we need to kind of distribute it to the rest of the market, and so that's the future for us is continuing to automate as much of that task and to bring it to the rest of the market.
It feels like you've made a lot of progress in the technology, and the market has moved quite a bit, but it also feels like it's super early days. I'm super excited that you've bet on GCP and Google Cloud and SADA to be your partner, because ideally we'll be there for the journey. You'll have us to depend on as your needs shift and change. And please continue to tap us on the shoulder when you're thinking about doing something new. Our job is to make sure that we're always ahead of what technology is going to be released by Google that may be transformational in nature and what our customers can use. So I'm really excited for you. I loved the way you articulated the opportunity in retail and the evolution of retail. I haven't quite heard it put this way before. So I learned quite a bit, James. So thank you so much. And I think the audience is going to enjoy this quite a bit.
Thank you. We really appreciate the partnership and the opportunity to kind of share some thoughts with each other. Thanks a lot.
So much.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.